were talking about generosity the other day.
Can you speak up?
So how is generosity wholesome? Why is it good to be generous?
Just in general.
Yeah, what's the point?
What's the point of generosity? Yeah.
What makes generosity good?
Why is it wholesome in itself, basically? Well, on the most fundamental level, it is wholesome because it involves, it's founded, even if a person is not aware of it. The act of generosity basically has its core in the act of non-self-centeredness or selflessness or non-selfishness. Like when you use the word selfish, like people already have notions about selfish and non-selfish, and like even if you're non-selfish, you're doing it as your sort of decision and choice. So it's being selfish or not selfish. It's on a not on that fundamental level that I'm referring to here. It's kind of secondary to it, because people can selfishly engage in acts of not selfishness. But what I'm talking about is the pure nature of the act of generosity. If you sort of look at it in its own context, it is founded upon non-selfishness of a genuine kind. It doesn't revolve around self-centeredness. So that's why generosity is good, even for people who are selfish, even for people who do it for selfish reasons. People can be generous for selfish reasons, but still that does not cancel out the act of generosity, which is the act of non-selfishness. Sure, on a more general level, their selfishness has taken possession of that non-selfish generosity, but in itself it still counts. Obviously, it's better to not be selfish on any level. So that's why generosity in itself is good. That's it. That's the sole reason. Now, why is generosity non-selfish? Well, that's just the nature of things. So generosity in itself, you could then, based on what I said, you could see that generosity in itself, it's not that fundamental. Generosity in itself is good because it contains the fundamental principle of non-selfishness. So if you can tap into the fundamental principle of non-selfishness, you don't have to be generous. Because you will neither be generous nor not generous. You'll go beyond selfishness, even if you don't give anything to anyone for the rest of your life. But it's just people who don't reach those levels of development of their mind, that kind of freedom. For them, it's good to even just emulate selfishness. Emulate generosity, which will then contain acts of non-selfishness. They are not aware of it, to what extent or whatever, but in itself, it still counts. It still matters. So basically, one should be actively sort of engaged in generosity, if he has means and ability to do so, and so on, but should not make a practice out of it, because it's only like a second best. Like if you can't really commit to the practice and really develop your mind directly without any intermediary, which would be the acts of generosity, then yeah, if you can't do those things more directly, then focus on generosity. Or if you're not sure if you're doing those things rightly or not, keep doing generosity just in case. Be generous, be helpful, and that's it. Well, I guess another thing you could add is that, yeah, a person should try and do it selflessly, but an unenlightened person can have no choice but being selfish. Whatever he does, it's because he wants to do it. He has a desire to do so, which means he's acting selfishly, always. But then you have selfishness that will then perpetuate and bring more selfishness, and then you have selfishness that can then bring more generosity. So you want to cultivate that kind of selfishness. That's why the Buddha, for example, would encourage people actively think about benefits of giving, because you'll be reborn in heaven and so on. Yeah, want it and do it. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it's not super like 100% pure, but for where they are at, it's good.